Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self.
So, Evan, let's start with diving deeper into your story. What led you to becoming a professional mental health speaker and a functional practitioner? Just walk us through that journey.
Yeah, well, so I'll summarize the story that led up to there because obviously that's not a job that no one at 5 years old is saying, wow, I can't wait to be a professional mental health speaker or a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, right? No one says that at 5 years old yet. And it was really the experiences that I had throughout my life, elementary, middle school, high school, dealing with these severe issues and not really understanding them that led me to want to choose to speak because I hated speaking. I was someone who I've thrown up 25 minutes after a presentation one time. That is a true story. Another true story is that I did one presentation for my community college effective speaking course, and then I dropped out once they wanted me to do the second one. And the first one was a minute where you basically had to do it was more or less adult show and tell. And that's all I could handle. And then the second one, I was like, nope, I'm out. I'm too scared of this. So it wasn't the career that anyone in my life or myself would have thought I would have picked, but I felt pulled to it after a certain conversation that I basically had with a friend and a situation I had with a friend slash mentor where he made me present for our sales group one day because we were all in like this health and wellness company. It was a network marketing type of thing, and I know people either love them or hate them. I'm not involved anymore. It's not the point. The point is they got me into personal growth and they helped me push out of my comfort zone. And it was the first time ever I got to speak on something that I actually cared about. Because Rachel, you know this, like when we're stuck in school, how often do we have to present on something that we don't want to present about? We don't even like half the kids in our class. We know half of them don't like us. They're talking about us behind our back. Of course we hate public speaking, right? But to get to talk to a group of people who actually wanted to hear this and to share with them, hey, I have some products here and some things that I discovered that helped my mental health. It was the only way I can describe it personally to me was a kind of spiritual experience. I'm a more spiritual guy now, where I just felt an overwhelming feeling like, wow, you're supposed to go do that. And I was all hyped up in the moment. And then I thought a sec about it. I'm like, wow, 4 weeks ago, you just dropped out of your college course and you want to go speak. So it was kind of a weird thing, but that's what led me to wanting to do it because I thought that was quite possibly the only thing that would have taken me away from my path of destruction in high school. I needed someone to come in, share some real stuff and shock my system and just kind of rock me mentally. And I don't mean that so aggressively because I know when I post something, there's sometimes teachers or guidance counselors that listen. I don't mean that so aggressively. But what I mean is, a kid's stuck in the routine of listening to teachers all day, right? And you guys do a great job, but it's a routine. So they need someone to come in with some real stories and just go like, bam, like, wow, that was different. And I have a limited period of time, 40 minutes to really do that, but it can be done in that period of time, I found. So that's what made me want to go do it. And it was a risk because I didn't know if it was going to work, but to be able to do this work for the last several years now and see that this really does help kids, they're on that path, man. And you helped get them off of that. That's one of the coolest and most rewarding things in the world. So that's what made me want to do it.
Okay. Explain this path of destruction that you speak
Sure.
of. And what were the actual challenges when it comes to your mental health?
Okay. So I'll start kind of from the beginning and then please, because I could do it for a while. So be like,
Okay.
dude, shut up if need be. In elementary school, well, not even really. I guess I was just starting kindergarten. So yeah, about elementary school. Around 5 years old, I experienced my first panic attack, and no one knew what this was. I wasn't someone that came from a family with some history of trauma or something terrible like that. Quite the opposite. I grew up in a really wonderful area, and I actually had it really well compared to 99% of the world. So nothing in the external environment would have made you think that, oh, this kid should be dealing with mental health issues because many people 20, 21 years ago didn't have that understanding that mental health is a lot more than just trauma. It can be things that are biochemical. It can be neuroinflammation. Our modern world is really causing a lot of these issues for people. And so we actually went to the doctor, my parents and I, and unfortunately, as well as this doctor meant, and I still know this person to this day, he's a great dude. He just missed it, man. And I was 5 years old. I probably didn't have the right language to describe what was happening to me. He didn't call this a panic attack. And even though they were, what he said to my parents and myself was, hey, Evan just gets himself a little too worked up. He gets thinking too fast. He's going to outgrow this. Now, I remembered that. I remember the doctor saying that to me and my parents. So when I turned 6 and then 9 and then 12, 15, and these things continued to get worse over the years. And then by 15 years old, I'm not dealing with a panic attack once or twice a month anymore. I'm a kid that's dealing with multiple anxiety disorders, major depressive disorder, substance abuse disorder. I had a 3-4 month period of daily panic attacks at one point. It really was panic disorder. I was afraid to leave the house because I thought you start associating these certain places with triggers for the panic attacks, even though the panic attacks would happen to me anywhere. But I started trying to control it in that way. I just couldn't do it. But I didn't talk to anyone about what was really happening because I thought, wow, I didn't outgrow this. The doctor couldn't figure it out. I mean, remember, 15 is still a kid. I thought I was crazy. That was the word that I used, Rachel. I thought I must be crazy because he can't figure this out. And I'm getting worse. I can't talk to people about this. Why would you want to tell someone you're crazy? You know what I mean? So that led up to about 15. And at 15 is when the substances started for me. I couldn't really take anymore. I could handle the anxiety, but the daily panic attacks and then major depressive disorder, that led to a complete shift in personality for Evan Transue. And I went from this really nerdy kid. I was the type of person, I always say to students, that would tell on you if you did something wrong when the teacher left the room. I'd be like, oh, yo, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, like Jimmy did this while you were gone. Like, I sucked, man. I was not the type of kid you wanted in your class. Straight A student, teacher's pet. And I went from that person to the individual who's now getting high every single day. I was the last person in my friend group to ever try a drug, including simple stuff like weed and alcohol. But very quickly, I became the one with the biggest problem. I'm the one that needs to use this stuff before school. I'm the one that needs to use it during school. And then that eventually led to harder things like certain benzodiazepines, Xanax, Klonopin, Ativan as well. I didn't really ever try any drugs outside of benzodiazepines, marijuana, and alcohol. And it sounds funny for someone who abused substances for so long to not go out of that, but I just wanted to feel something different. I didn't really like drugs. I'm not an experimenter, so to speak, in that way. And of course, as adults, it doesn't take much insight to know, okay, that doesn't really last long. When someone is using drugs repeatedly, things start to get bad. And well, I'll pause there for a second before I kind of get into the end of all that, just to make sure there's nothing that you want to add in or anything.
Okay. No, keep going.
Okay.
I can wait.
Cool. So I was high pretty much every single day for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and I formed a nice little habit for myself. And this was all during high school. So I went from this straight A student who was once recommended for their school district's gifted program to failing school, literal F's on grades and stuff, not handing things in. And 11th grade was just a terrible year. 10th grade was like dipping. By the end of 11th grade, I basically had like a 1.8, 1.9 cumulative GPA. So even my great grades in like 9th grade couldn't carry me anymore. It wasn't working. I started selling weed myself to support my drug habit. I couldn't afford it. It was not the most expensive thing you've ever heard, but certainly more than a high school student can afford, even if they're working. And I started dealing with some really sketchy people. I was robbed multiple times. I chose to start carrying a weapon around. Not that that was ever used or I even wanted to use it, but I wasn't a particularly intimidating dude back then. And I didn't want to fight. I wanted to get high. And I was very scared of the people that did these things to me. And I was afraid that one day this was going to be more than just grabbing my money or my stuff and running. It was going to be like, all right, let's physically hurt this guy too. And I didn't know what I was going to do in that kind of situation. I get 17 days in my senior year of high school, and I'm 2 weeks away exactly from my 18th birthday. Now, the reason that's important is because of what people say around your birthday. And I'm sure you've had this happen where it's like, someone's like, oh, Rachel, yo, 1 week away from your birthday, right? Or 1 month away. Someone hypes it up. Well, someone said to me, hey, Ev, 2 weeks away from the big 18. And I'm like, crap. Because I loved the crime shows back then, Law and Order SVU, Criminal Minds. And I knew, I wasn't a lawyer or anything, but I knew enough about the law to know at 18, I was a legal adult. I thought, wait a second. If I get caught doing the things that I'm doing right now, selling weed, carrying a weapon, blacked out on pills, I might go to jail. Like, I really might go to jail. I didn't have a lot of business being in jail. That wasn't really my thing. So I said, I better stop this. I had complete ignorance to the reality of what can happen to someone when they just stop using drugs all of a sudden. I was not familiar with the concept of withdrawal. And I don't think it was just that, but I do think that was a major part of it, because I only made it about 36 hours sober. I made this whole pact to myself. I'm going to switch everything up and fix my stuff before my 18th. And I tried, but I still thought I needed to be out here doing this alone, and it just wasn't the case. So I quit the drugs. About 36 hours in, I completely lost my mind. And I don't mean that in a not politically correct way, because I know people like, they hate the word crazy or lost your mind in the mental health world. I mean, it actually felt like I lost my mind. I got myself into a really serious altercation that did involve the weapon in so much as it was used as a threat. And you can't do that stuff. And so I went to juvie. I spent my 18th birthday on house arrest, and I did end up getting kicked out of my high school, all for that kind of same stuff. And I was left after those incidents happened, because it all happened in such a short period of time, where I was just reflecting, and I'm like, dude, what is going on? Like what is the plan here? Unfortunately, the only coping mechanism I had ever developed for stress was drugs. I get out of juvie, and I'm having people sneak to my parents' house at 3 a.m. while I'm on house arrest to drop off drugs. It was out of control. I wasn't thinking 10 years ahead. I was thinking 10 minutes ahead. I want to feel something different. My reputation was destroyed. I knew people, everyone at my school was laughing at me. This was in the newspaper. It wasn't good. And so I knew something needed to change. I had no idea how to do that. So I kept choosing the drugs. Then it was about 3.5 months after that. I skated through that whole time and I didn't get caught. I learned how to fake drug tests. Not that I always like to word this correctly. I'm not like bragging about that, like, oh, the cool skill. Like, no, this was pathetic, right? This was really sad that that's what I felt like I needed to do just to get by. And then I had an event that finally changed things in the positive direction for me. So this all happened in September. It was the beginning of the school year, like I had mentioned. 3.5 months later, we're at the holidays. I asked my parents if I could be allowed out on New Year's Eve. Now, they looked at me a little crazy when I asked that, because I'm on probation at the time. But in their eyes, I was doing well. They thought everything was going better. They thought Ev's doing great. And so they said yes. They talked to my probation officer even, but there was 2 rules. And the 2 rules were, okay, yeah, you can go out, but we're going to drop you off and you're going to get picked up by us at 12 o'clock. How does that sound? I'm like, that sounds like it sucks, but it's better than sitting at home all night with you guys. So I will take that. I get dropped off 10 minutes in, arrogant mistake. I start drinking and doing drugs. 12 a.m. we get picked up just like we're supposed to. Now I say we, who's we? Well, we is myself and my girlfriend of about 4 years. Now I know when we're in high school, and even as adults, but some people won't want to admit this, but totally adults do this too. When we really like someone, we sometimes don't like to show our interest in them. We get their text and we're so excited they just texted us, and then we wait an hour and act like we're so busy and can't answer them, and then we get back to them, right? So of course we do that in high school, and those were the games that I played with this girl. But the truth is, after spending so much time with her, even this tough guy, drug addict image, I knew in the back of my head, or I thought I knew, that this is the person I'm going to marry one day. I love this person, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life with them. I just need to fix my stuff up whenever that happens, right? That'll happen one day. So I convinced her to do a lot of the same things that I did that night. And she didn't have nearly as much experience, and she was about 100 pounds soaking wet. So she gets in the car with myself and my parents, and I'm cool, like I can hide it. She is we're 30 seconds into the car ride, and she repeats a full sentence to my parents. And I look out the window and I'm just like, okay, mentally prepping, I'm going to jail tonight. These people are going to call the probation officer. That's it, I'm done. And my parents were pissed. They weren't pissed at me.
Wait, what did she say to them?
I don't remember even what the sentence was. It was like, basically my mom asked like, how was the night? And she was giving an answer to that. And then so like she said something funny and we laughed, and my mom didn't say anything extra after that. And she repeated the sentence again to my mom. And I'm like, oh my God, like what the heck are you doing? I'm like, you just nailed it. That was actually funny, but you said it twice. So that's kind of an issue. And not to mention she was a highly introverted woman, and she wasn't introverted that night, that's for sure, especially not given the circumstance. So my parents are pissed. They're not mad at me because they actually had faith in me and did not think I could be so stupid as to be in their car on New Year's Eve on probation, drunk and high. So they're mad at Kels because, again, this was someone I had dated for a while. It was like they knew her, right? Like they knew her well. They're so mad that they stop the car in the middle of the road. They turn around and they start ripping Kels apart. And with everything that they're screaming at her, I'm realizing, this should be me. And they're saying things like, yo, come on, Kels, like, how could you do this? You couldn't go one night being sober? What's the matter with you? Are you an addict? Oh, you know how well Ev's doing right now and how much he cares about you. You couldn't be there for him tonight to support him? What if the probation officer's at the house when we get back? He could go to jail for something that you did. Is that what you want?
Mm.
And behind this whole tough image that I like to put on a regular basis was actually someone who was often really scared and acted like a coward. So I didn't say anything to defend her. It was like the words wanted to come out, and they did, but I couldn't let them out. I did want it, but I couldn't let it out. And so we get home, and you would think that the only words out of my mouth would have been, hey, thank you so much for not getting me sent to jail tonight. But she kept her mouth shut. She didn't rat me out. I mean, there's no consequences for her, really, if she said something. It would have all been on me. But that's when the shame started kicking in. And I started having these realizations like, wow, dude, you convinced someone to do drugs tonight. Like, that is so beyond wrong and inappropriate. It's not even funny. And like, why are you doing that? Is it because you feel like you need to bring them down with you? Because otherwise you realize they shouldn't be with you. And that was another realization. This person should have broke up with me about 4 or 5 months ago. And she stuck with you through all of this stuff. This girl had way more options than me, I'll tell you that. Like, definitely, especially high school Ev. She had options, Ev did not. So there's no reason that she even had to be with me. And she had my back through all of this while everything was going on and the worst stuff in my life was happening. And I'm like, I'm losing it. And that's how you're treating this person. Now, I know it seems logical that if you feel that way, you should probably apologize or whatever. And I agree with that. But the shame was too much. My ego wouldn't let me admit that I was wrong. And so I chose anger because anger is a lot easier to show than shame. Well, my ego learned a lesson that night because that would be the last time I got to use my ego on this girl. So I started freaking out at Kels. I didn't apologize at all. I started freaking out at her and I said things that were disgusting. I would never repeat them in any type of interview or anything like that. And I made this girl that I love, that I think I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, cry for about an hour straight until the point that we just pass out. Now, I wake up in the morning and she had already left. And so I didn't think anything of that in the moment. But as I'm starting to reach out to her, I'm starting to realize what just happened. That was her breaking point. She couldn't take any more than that. And fair enough. I don't know how she made it to then. But that was it. She wasn't going to be treated like that, in addition to being my support network for every little thing that I was doing wrong, not judging me for anything. She could have my back with those things, which is already more than enough to ask for. But then to be disrespected on top of it, that was the line for her. And that smacked me mentally like a brick wall. And I started getting my self-awareness back. And I don't know how many people out there that might have used substances before or had mental health journeys can relate to this, but we kind of get trapped in this idea, or I shouldn't say this idea, this world of just, again, the 10-minute thinking thing. Like, oh, what do I do now? What do I do now? How do I feel better in the moment? How do I get away from this situation? How do I get high? How do I stop this anxiety? Whatever. You're not thinking long term. And all of a sudden I started thinking long term. And I'm like, hey, bro, you're on probation doing hard drugs. You're going to end in one of two ways, dead or in jail. So which one are you trying to do? And when I actually sat with that, I'm like, I don't really like either of those options. And I realized I have now lost my reputation. I lost my chances of going to a good college. I wanted to do that. I lost this person that I loved. The Evan Transue plan is not working, objectively speaking. So when are we going to change something up and do something different? And although that hurt, tremendously, that girl leaving saved my life, probably saved my life. Because she was the catalyst that made me start thinking about what's going on and realizing I need to do something different. If I can't get better for Evan Transue, I need to at least get better for these other people that care about me. Every single one of them has their hand out, and I'm smacking their hands away every single day. I'm not reaching out back to them. And so one thing I'll ask, I know that we have plenty more to talk about, but something so important, and this will be the most important part of the podcast, is the reason I speak now, share my story publicly, wrote the book and do the speaking in schools and stuff, is because as I got better, I used to think I was a victim. Why did this happen to me, man? Why did I have to have all these health issues and mental health stuff? This is so unfair. I realized actually I'm lucky because we don't get a lot of aha moments in life. Those aren't things that are evenly distributed to every single person at this perfect time. And then their life becomes like this fairy tale movie where, oh yeah, I went through my darkness and depths and now I'm on top. No, that's movie stuff. That doesn't happen to everyone. And for every one person like me, especially considering the drugs, there's 50 that are either dead, still addicted to drugs, or in and out of the system. And by the system, I mean jail. And so the sole reason that I share this stuff, even though it's embarrassing, is because I want to be someone else's aha moment. And I want to be that smack in the face that, yes, maybe it's uncomfortable today, but it's certainly a lot better than losing people that you love or destroying your reputation or waking up in a hospital. Not that I did that, but I've seen other people do that. And so what I'm going to ask of people today is that if you're listening to this or watching this and you're suffering in silence, please let this be the aha moment. Like, don't wait for all the other stuff. Reach out for help today. And the truth is, if you talk to 100 people, some people aren't going to understand this. Some might even judge it. What I can promise you, though, is someone who does this work and talks to people all the time about it. Dude, if you talk to that 100 people, yes, there's probably about 75 to 90 in there that really get this more than you realize. And they absolutely do care. So ignore that 15 to 25, man. Don't like curse them out, but ignore them, push them away, and go to that 75, 90% that really do care and are there to support you. So it can start with a friend, but the best way to do this, get involved with a counselor, get involved with someone like Rachel, because I know that mental health is not your niche per se, but certainly it was the functional stuff that helped me, right? So we need to figure out what the best path is for us and go take it. So if you guys are out there today suffering in silence or not really telling people the full story, please make this the last day that you're doing this by yourself. It's ridiculous and no one needs to be doing that.
Mm. Yes, thank you for saying that and for sharing all of that wild story. And okay, so if someone wants to reach out, you believe that the first step would be a mental health counselor or a therapist first, or I mean, what is the best go-to in your mindset?
Sure. I think the number one thing, if I had to generalize it, is a counselor. Because a counselor, for those that don't know, and some people really don't know this is not someone that gives a diagnosis, guys. This isn't someone who prescribes medication. I think all of us, especially after the year and a half now of COVID and stuff, I think it's good to just go once a year or even to just check in. It's someone that acts as, and I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but they act as a sounding board. They ask us the questions that sometimes we haven't done the work on ourselves enough yet to ask. And even the best of us, the people with the most or the highest levels of introspection, we don't always have the ability to see through our own BS. And so they can help us with that by asking those right questions and get us thinking differently to take different actions. Now, of course, a mental health counselor is trained in many ways and can help support us in numerous ways. But if nothing else, I think just having that person to talk to openly without judgment, I mean, they are legally bound to protect you in terms of confidentiality. That's a really special thing when you're out there suffering in silence, to know that I can go to this person, I can say just about anything. Don't tell them you're going to hurt someone else, right? I'm joking. Like, you can't say that. But anything else you can say it, and they have your back and it's private. So yes, that's the number one thing I recommend to everyone, actually.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good point. Just having someone to just release that and just feel like you have that support. And to what you said about working with someone like me, that is definitely an important piece. And because nutrition and lifestyle changes we both know that can be a catalyst to getting, reducing depression, anxiety, and working through a lot of those issues.
Right.
And yeah, although I don't specialize in that necessarily, I actually have my own personal struggles with mental health. And I used to suffer from panic attacks all the time, my entire life, anxiety, depression, went through substance abuse until I was basically diagnosed with my autoimmune disease. And that was like my aha moment. I was like, oh, that all played a role in me getting sicker and sicker. And really, I was just trying to cover up, same thing as you, like trying to cover up the anxiety and the depression with other things. And in my personal life, I've had very, very special people, family members and friends pass away from drug overdose. So yes, like you said, and I don't talk about this stuff a lot, at least on social media or on my podcast, or haven't yet. but it is important to spread that word. And like you said, the more people you talk to, like most likely they've experienced something like that personally or know someone who has gone through something really crazy. So yes,
Yeah,
like let this conversation, if it need be your aha moment. Yeah.
absolutely.
So how did you get away from all this? What was so you had this turning point. How did you get off the drugs? How did you move past that? How did you start to repair all that kind of damage that developed in your life?
Sure. Well, Paulo Coelho, author of The Alchemist and many other books, but that's the one I think he's most famous for. He says, when you make a powerful decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. And I didn't know about that at that time, but looking back in hindsight, it's so clear that that's what happened. Because I had no idea how the heck I was going to get better, but I knew this needed to stop. I knew that I was gambling with my life at that point, and in more ways than one, right? I'm not only just talking about my freedom, but this is something I actually rarely share often. I woke up a couple of times when I mixed Xanax and alcohol together, and it was very obvious that I just lost like my breath in sleep, and I was waking up like gasping because my respiratory rate went so low that it like caught itself, and I was like, okay, that's horrifying. Um, and I realized that I need to stop gambling with this and just rolling the dice. I didn't know what to do though. One of the first things that I did, and it's why I recommend the counseling for people, is because, and remember, I still think I'm crazy. I don't understand what mental health issues are. Like, this was so ridiculous how much ignorance I had to mental health. It wasn't even funny. But I started talking with these counselors who were actually assigned to me on probation. Now, I used to go in like the very hardened teenager that I was, arms crossed, head down. I mean, these guys couldn't tell me a damn thing. And then finally I went in and I started talking about what the heck was going on with me and the things that had been going on through my entire life, the fact that I wanted to change. And that's when I learned, because even though counselors can't diagnose, they got me to the right places for it. I learned that I dealt with panic attacks, and that's not called being crazy. Or I learned that I had major depressive disorder that was untreated, and that's not called being a psychopath, because I didn't have much emotions I felt when I had depression. I felt very numb. And so I associated that, my young teenage self, with being a psychopath, because I looked up that they don't have the normal spectrum of emotions. I mean, this was a wild theory that I had, but I was on drugs. I wasn't thinking properly. That's what I convinced myself was wrong with me. And so they taught me that. They taught me what generalized anxiety disorder was. And so I realized those were the three main things that I had. And these are very treatable mental health conditions. They're very common, actually. And there are so many things that we can do for them, but we can't really find all those options if we never talk about it. And that's why my number one message is actually to talk about it. I'm a huge proponent of functional medicine. You know that, but can't get to functional medicine if no one knows that you have it. So that's always the first step for me. And then after that, where I talk about like more of like the Paulo Coelho, the alchemist type of stuff, is it just seems like these perfect things started falling into place one after the other, and it's so damn cool looking back. I continued to do the community college stuff. I was actually doing overall well, A's and B's. Probably could have done a little better. Probably could have been a straight A student in that, but I was doing better than I had been doing the last few years, and that counted for something. And I got invited to come out to one of these network marketing events by the only person that I ever talked to the entire time I was in that community college. He was the only person that ever talked to me. I was very quiet, I don't want to use, I hate when people use introvert and lack of confidence interchangeably, but I appeared introverted. I had no confidence to talk to people, separate things. And so he was the only person that ever talked to me. And he said, hey, do you want to come to this thing? And I came out. And I met some of the people who are the most incredible individuals ever. And they're still some of my best friends to this day. I just had a phone call with one of them for about an hour and 10 minutes today. This is 8 years later. They acted as mentors to me. They helped me get into business and helped me realize I wasn't a loser. I needed help. And the coolest part about that group was that they could see Evan Transue for who he could be and not what he was at the time. And they did that with every single person in that group. They didn't see the person who had just been kicked out of school and who was still on probation, actually, and who had nothing to his name, who had no job, living with mom and dad, all this stuff. They saw, oh, this is what you can do if you're willing to work on it and develop yourself as an individual. And without them, man, I don't know what I would have done. So I can almost generalize every little positive thing that's happened through that group of people. They're the ones that encourage me to try new things. They're the ones that encourage me to read the books. And I got a huge library now of personal development books and medicine books and all these things that I've read that just help your mind get in the right place. And they're the ones that encourage me to set goals and actually dream. I mean, a lot of us walk through life, as Zig Ziglar said, as wandering generalities. Like we have no idea where we're going. We're the ship without a map, like ship without a compass. We're just sailing. We're just sailing. Hopefully we land on land eventually. But if we don't, well, that is what it is. That's a crazy way to live. We have to be specific. We have to know where we're going and what we're coming for. And then that way we know if we're on course or not. How do you know if you're off course if you don't even know where the hell you're going to begin with, And it sounds so simple, but most people don't walk around with goals. I know you well enough already to know that you probably have a list of goals like a mile high. Most people don't have them, and I didn't have them. And so just setting those, even if they're super basic, it gives you direction in your life. It gives you satisfaction and purpose. So it was a mix of a lot of general help, self-help stuff that really worked for me, as well as eventually, of course, getting into the more functional side of stuff, which of course we can talk about. But I got about 50% better just doing the counseling and getting the right people in my life. We are the product of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Another way to say this that I always think it's kind of funny, it's chuckle worthy, is that if you hang around the barbershop long enough, you're going to get yourself a haircut, right? It just means that we become the people we spend the most time with. And so be careful, because I was trying to heal drug addiction. My 5 best high school friends were smoking weed every day and getting blacked out drunk every weekend. That's probably not my people right now for the goals that I have in my life.
Absolutely. Yep. I wonder if did you ever take prescription drugs for this, and whether or not you did? I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about this, but what are your thoughts on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds and things like that?
Sure. And yeah, I appreciate you wording it that way. I'm an open book.
Okay.
Lack of vulnerability used to be my biggest weakness. Willingness to be vulnerable now is my biggest strength. So I'm so full of self-help quotes, and I apologize for
I'm
that.
impressed.
I hope
I'm like,
your audience
wow,
likes it.
I don't have a memory for quotes like that. I'm jealous.
So I did try some SSRIs, which are, for those that don't know, the class of antidepressants / anti-anxiety meds. They're more long-term anti-anxiety medications. They're not the quick-acting ones. Those are the benzodiazepines, the Xanaxes, Klonopins, Ativans, Valiums. The SSRIs did not work for me. I have a lot of questions about them. I think the studies, if people actually read it, are interesting, to say the least. I don't think many people realize that we actually don't fully understand the mechanism by which SSRIs work. I'm not saying it's a weak theory, but the consumer does not understand that it is a theory. Everyone says, oh yes, we're inhibiting the reuptake of serotonin, and that's why we call it an SSRI. That's what we think happens. Guys, this is not a perfect science. Like, we don't know that. And we don't even know if serotonin is technically the reason for people's depression. You gotta really be careful. And of course, most of us aren't doctors, so why the hell would we sit on PubMed and try to figure this stuff out? It's too in-depth for most people, and I don't mean that in terms of their intellectual capacity. I mean in terms of their willingness to actually go out and study it. I think anyone can study it, but do you actually want to do that? Well, I was obsessed with it. I know you're obsessed with stuff like this because it's affected us so greatly, but most people aren't, and they don't realize what they're taking. So I'm not against it, because I also know people that this saves their life every single day. I have seen that. And do I think maybe you should figure out why you even need it to begin with long-term? Yes. Do I not advise it for people? I mean, one, I can't do that anyway, but even in a disclaimer way, do I not advise it? Absolutely not. As someone who suffered with mental health issues himself, I hate how a lot of people in the functional space just completely dismiss these things. They do work for some people. I've seen it happen. I've seen it take people off the ledge, both literally and figuratively. That's not something to condemn. What we should be condemning is the fact that we're giving this to a 16-year-old and basically giving them this indefinite plan to be on this for the rest of their life without ever looking into why that they need it. That I condemn. That I detest. To say that I detest the use of the medication just inherently, that's ridiculous. And I would challenge if the person's ever actually dealt with mental health issues if they think that way. With benzodiazepines were highly effective. Xanax worked phenomenally for me. Xanax is something that, and I've had to be very careful with this because that's something that I abused at one time. So I needed to take a long period of not using that before I ever considered it. And you're like, well, why do you even use it? Do you deal with anxiety? I do use it occasionally for planes. I absolutely hate flying. I'm working on that. I'm doing just about everything that you can. And for about 12, 13 years, I didn't get on a plane. I thought I would never fly again. And then I had some great friends that encouraged me to get on. They helped me out. And I flown about like 20, 25 times in the past 2 years. I need to for my job. That was what is what encouraged me. I turned down my first speaking engagement because I couldn't get on a damn plane. And I said, I'm never doing that again. And so I went and figured it out. I've used a small dose of Xanax, less than 25% of those flights, which is great. But I do admit the longer I don't fly, the more I feel like I need it. And if I'm with someone, I have no problem. If I'm alone and it's a long flight, it does get to me. And so I'm still working through that. I've tried the guided meditations. I'm even into like some more like hypnotherapy type stuff, NLP stuff. I'm going to be working with someone for that soon. But I admit that I still use these things. And yeah, using that maybe on average once or twice a year at a small dose, that's wonderful for me. It changes my entire experience, where normally I'd be highly stressed about an event I'm having 4 or 5 weeks from now, because of course flights are planned out, to knowing, what, I can get on this, take a little nap, and I'm basically there and I feel great. So I don't condemn it at all. I just think we need to be very careful about how we're using it. And I'm always working on using it less and getting over that fear. So as long as you're working on the other stuff, do what you got to do. But it's when we say, well, I have Xanax, so I'm never going to work on this fear of flying again. I don't know if I would advise that. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Right. Because it's kind of, in a sense, going back to that Band-Aid approach. And so, yeah, I'm wondering what was the root cause of your mental health issues as you were growing up? You said that you didn't have a necessarily bad childhood or anything. Like where did it all come from? And then where does it normally come from in other people?
Sure.
These kinds of issues.
Rachel, this was one of those cases where, when we're doing the labs with people, take your pick, very severe gluten sensitivity, blastocystis hominis, H. pylori, tanked hormones, exhaustive phase as a 21-year-old male, right? It's like, so what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. My mom was very sick as well for a good period of her life. And her mom, my grandmother, has also been sick for a very long period. So I was kind of the first to break this cycle, thank God. But I don't know. I don't know where this exactly came from or what specific thing it was, but I know that changing all of those things helped out quite a bit. And so for me, it was, I got to change my diet around. I eat an organic, seasonal, paleo-based diet. I do get into metabolic ketosis very often. I stay in that more often than not. I find that helps me a ton, especially under periods of high stress. Now, for those listening, that is not the same as the keto diet. Just because you're eating the keto diet does not mean you're in a metabolic state of ketosis. You have to be able to actually, track and measure this. You got to be able to do the little blood thing and see it pop up for yourself. Okay. So that's a separate conversation for a different time. I'm really big on light. And I think we both share that, right? You got blue light blocking glasses nearby, I'm sure. I don't mess with that. I catch sunrise every single day. I block blue light at night. I have my screen filtered right now. I actually have, people can kind of always tell this, and it's funny because I do podcasts professionally, but I'm not going to change my standards for that. Like, I don't have any artificial light on right now. I have the natural light coming in, my screen's filtered on here, and that's why I always have like a weird lighting setup, but I'm not going to compromise what I'm doing to do business stuff normally. I think a little dose here and there is fine, but I'm not going to do that in general. And so that was huge for me, and definitely blocking the blue light at night. Like, I'm strict with that. If it's sunset, those blue light blockers are going on. I try to dim my room. I have a lot of, pull this up here. I have a lot of little tools that I use. This is probably my funniest one that I bring around the house. I have like this amber reading lamp, but I use this, like I'll hook it up to my pants and stuff, and I use it around the house. I got my Himalayan salt lamp. So what some might consider extreme with it, but if you've been through what I've been through, or people like you have been through health-wise, it's not extreme at all. Suffering like that when you have a very limited time in this physical body, as far as we know, that's extreme to me. Why would I want to be sick all the time? Why would I want to be relying on medication if I don't have to be? That's extreme. I'd rather just live in the way that nature wanted me to live, in the best way that I can in today's world, and enjoy myself and actually experience what it's like to be a human while I'm here and get to go do those things. So I don't know if you also asked what is the main reason that people normally deal with this stuff. I think it's very similar. I think it's dysfunction from our modern world. I think it's high levels of toxicity. I think it's reliance on carbohydrates. I think it's overuse of blue light and not getting enough sleep. Hell, if you stay up past 12 a.m., you're 42% more likely to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder. That's simple stuff, guys. We can get pretty advanced with this if we wanted to. That's simple stuff. How many people that are not in our space do you actually know that go to bed before 12 a.m. consistently? Like, virtually no one. No one does that. And you're already, there you go, 42%. more likely to be diagnosed with depression. It's crazy. Outside of that, to not recognize that trauma and abuse and bullying and all these things do play a legitimate role in mental health conditions is just asinine. I have a friend whose name I won't mention. He was a very good friend of mine from about 5, 6 years old, and he passed away from a drug overdose at 22. It was heroin laced with fentanyl. He did not need to eat organic and get to bed on time. I'm not saying those things would have hurt him, but this was someone that was abused. This was someone that grew up in an incredibly rough family, and multiple terrible things happened. A parent died, but step parent went to jail. Brother goes to jail. It was real shit. And so to tell him, hey, buddy, I'm going to run some labs on you and I need you to eat organic and I'm going to address this bacteria and you should be good. That's insulting. That might be a great complimentary thing. It's not going to hurt. That's insulting though. Those types of people need to do a deep level of work that comes outside of just the realm of functional medicine. And that's why I'm never dogmatic about this. This is a multifaceted approach for most people, even for myself, because even if trauma didn't cause my mental health issues that were untreated certainly caused a hell of a lot of trauma. I had to rebuild my reputation for my entire family, friends, and school. Everyone no one trusted Ev. No one thought that I was a normal person. So yeah, that's traumatic, but mental health issues cause that. So I think for virtually just about anyone at the end of the day, you're going to need a little bit of everything. Maybe you need some medication for a time. Definitely going to need to do some inner emotional work, counseling, whatever. Maybe you need some functional medicine type stuff and address your lifestyle. What percentage of each of those everyone might need, completely dependent on the situation that they've been going through.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, everybody needs, I always even tell my clients, like, I always double check, okay, what kind of trauma have you been through? What's going on? And do you need to seek support through a therapist? I try and do some things like, okay, let's incorporate some EFT or
Nice.
some breath work or different things like that. But yeah, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. So I need that additional support to really push someone to overcome diseases, because as we know, that plays a big role in chronic illnesses. I want to touch back on the light piece and the diet piece. Can you explain why light is so important? Like, why are you blocking everything, and why are you doing, you have the amber reading light lamp and all of that?
Yeah. Well, it's one of my favorite subjects, so I appreciate that. We evolved in the light. That's it. And I'm a spiritual guy. I'm not. My God, it's so ridiculous how you can't say one thing without it automatically inferring something else. I'm not saying because I believe in evolution that I'm not a spiritual person either. I do think both can coexist. I really do. And we did evolve in the light though. We are beings of light, quite literally. And from the science perspective, like, we need these things. Our mitochondria, our little batteries in our cells, they rely on this kind of stuff. So I always try to break it down simply for people. And there's a guy named Dr. Doug Wallace out of out of CHOP, which is actually very local to me, which is really cool, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And he was the first one to really present this information in about 2016, 2017, saying that it was these dysfunctional mitochondria in a subclinical sense, because you can have real mitochondrial disease, but doctors are going to figure that out. We're talking about like a subclinical dysfunction, could account for at least 85% of the chronic disease epidemic in his findings, and that includes mental health as well. Chances are it's a lot more, but this was kind of the first round of that type of research. So I always found that fascinating. Now, light plays an integral role with the mitochondria and everything else that's going on. So just to kind of break down the things that we need to do, because we could spend hours talking about light. So here's the simple and straightforward stuff. One, you have the aspect of sunrise. That's probably, it's hard to say if you could only pick one, but if I could only pick one thing, I would say that'd be the most important, is getting out at sunrise with your bare eyes. That means no prescription glasses, because those filter part of the light, guys. No contacts, they filter part of the light as well. And definitely, for God's sake, no sunglasses. you can't be wearing. So I've had clients that went out, and I didn't say it, and they go out for sunrise, and like, they're sending me a chat, and they have sunglasses on. I'm like, my God, like, wait a second. We're catching the sunrise with our naked eye. That's how this works. So good job that you got out there, but can you please take the sunglasses off? And so you need to be doing that. As much skin exposed as possible is great, but I get that it's, especially at the time this is probably going to be released, it's still going to be winter, I'm assuming. So it's cold. I get that not many people want to do that. just get the eyes out at the very least. I wear a damn jacket and it's 28 degrees here this morning, right? But I got my bare eyes exposed. I'm basically sun gazing. And it's a really powerful thing for many reasons. One is that it's going to set that circadian rhythm. So that's the first and most powerful signal of the day that tells your body, hey, this is what time it is right now. We all know about circadian rhythms. We all know that we're supposed to sleep when it's dark, but we're the only human or the only animals that can override this completely. I mean, we just decide whatever we want to do. And oh yeah, so we'll invent artificial lights and we'll live under it. There's a neurosurgeon that probably you're well aware of, and he says human beings are the only animals smart enough to invent artificial light and dumb enough to live under it. And I was like, what a wonderfully said statement, because it is cool that we have it, but it's killing us. And so we get those first good signals, we set our circadian rhythm. The other thing for the mental health people out there especially is the UVA light. And people say, oh my God, UV light, isn't that the thing that gives you cancer? It's going to kill me, whatever. Again, that's a multiple hour conversation probably in and of itself. UVA is different than UVB. There's different parts of the UV spectrum. UVB is the one that burns you and gives you vitamin D. UVA is the one that is typically associated with like the wrinkles and stuff, God forbid. But by the way, if you're getting UVA from the sun, you're also getting red light, which kind of has a synergistic effect. The wrinkles and stuff are probably going to happen if you go sit in a tanning bed for, the next 30 years of your life and just start isolating a very specific part of the light spectrum and you're amplifying it. That's when that stuff's an issue. Nature was designed perfectly, okay? And we're designed perfectly to be in nature. UVA light does something, and this is about the nerdiest I'll get on here, where it cleaves a protein called POMC, otherwise known as pyropeomelanocortin. So if you play Scrabble, there's a nice 9-syllable word for you. You'll win the game, I'm sure. And pyropeomelanocortin is like this wonderful little protein, because what it does is it actually helps feed into some really important things. One of those things is dopamine. One of those things is serotonin, which is going to not only be important in and of itself, SSRIs, right? But it's actually going to convert to melatonin at night. Another thing is ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone, and that will convert to cortisol. Oh, isn't cortisol bad? Guys, we need cortisol, especially in the morning. Cortisol is supposed to actually be higher at that time, and we need healthy levels. And I promise you, Rachel, I'm sure you see this all the time. How many people are actually coming to us with too high of cortisol? They're usually tanked by the time they get to people like us. I'm not saying it never happens, but normally it is tanked.
They're tanked.
Yeah. So, yeah, too high of cortisol is not your problem right now, right? It's the constant desire of your body to output too much cortisol that's the issue. We need healthy amounts of it. Beta endorphins as well. I don't know if I mentioned that one. And so it's so funny because everyone knows the kind of idea about getting addicted to tanning beds. Guys, it's isolated, amplified UVA light primarily. That's what a tanning bed is. So yes, you are addicted. That's not an inherently bad thing when you're getting it from the sun. That's why we feel so good. People congregate to the beach and lakes and mountains all summer. We'll go pay $2,000-$3,000 to get a damn house next to the ocean and go sit in the sand for 5 hours a day for 7 days. That's what we choose to do recreationally. Have you ever thought about maybe that's what we're supposed to be doing normally? And that's what your body's designed to do, and that's why it feels so damn good. So that's a really important thing in general, and especially for the mental health aspect. Mm-hmm. Then you want to be getting midday sun. Again, to continuously tell your body what time of day it is. The brightness, the lux it's called, the unit of illumination, for the sun in the middle of the day, solar noon, is going to be a lot different than the sun in the morning. And that's okay. You need to let your body know that. So if you don't do anything else, and if you're stuck in an office, take sun breaks. Just do 5 minutes an hour if you can. People get smoke breaks every hour. So if they can go do that, and they're costing, maybe some insurance costs to the company, I think that you can make an argument for a light break, or just tell them that you're smoking, right? Ironically, that would be the thing that would be allowed to get you out. Tell them you're smoking, get out, go do those sun breaks. That's kind of cool. And then, of course, vitamin D is a huge factor in there. For time's sake, guys, look up vitamin D on PubMed or Google, and then type in any mental health condition that you'd like after that, and you will be good to go. It's winter here. We can't really get as much vitamin D. I got my Spurdy vitamin D lamp right over there, so I do use that. Especially as someone who gets very pale very quickly, I start losing that melanin. I'm a Northern European descent, so I get tan in the summer because of what I do. The minute that strong sun stops coming out, it fades away from me completely. So a vacation's actually the best thing that you can do. Moving's probably the second best. Well, moving would be the first best, I guess, but most people aren't going to do that. And then if you want a Spurdy vitamin D lamp, they're like $400. It's a great thing. So I have one of those over there. And then blocking the blue light at night. that's huge, because what you're doing is you're giving the body, if you're on a computer or something, or an LED is overhead, or you're on your phone, you're giving your body an improper signal saying that it's the middle of the day. That's how bright our phones are, that it actually tricks your body into thinking it's solar noon. And I know I mentioned solar noon once before. Solar noon, as opposed to actual noon, is when the sun's at the highest point over the horizon for that given day. And that'll fluctuate throughout the year where it goes to. Pretty dramatically, actually. From here, it can be as low as like 24 degrees over the horizon, all the way up to 60 or 70 in the winter. So it varies quite a bit. And solar noon will change accordingly. So you don't want to tell your body it's solar noon at 9 p.m. because that makes it physiologically impossible to release the proper amounts of melatonin and get yourself ready for bed. Now, would you actually just be in the dark or next to a fire in a perfect world? Yes, you would be. That's what we were designed to do. But it appears in the studies that we have now that the more red and darker red lights do not seem to stimulate, or sorry, they don't seem to inhibit melatonin production too much. It actually seems to allow it out. More specifically, it seems to be about 400 to 550 nanometer wavelengths that really mess with the melatonin and say, hey, we can't secrete that now because it's the middle of the day. So that's actually part of the ultraviolet part of the light spectrum. It's all of blue light, and it's even part of green. And so my glasses are over there, but the glasses that you want to make sure that you get ones that actually block a true 400 to 550. And so newsflash, if you have the clear lenses, those are not blue light blocking glasses for night. And everyone's like, everyone means well. I'm not literally condemning this. I'm just making a joke with fellow functional health professionals here. It's just like the sunglasses thing in the morning. Hey, I'm catching sunrise, and they have their sunglasses on. They're like, oh, Ev, don't worry. I found these other glasses. Like, they're way cooler. They're clear lenses. I'm like, do you think I'm wearing these red ones because I thought it looked freaking cool? Like, you don't think there was maybe a reason I have them? Guys, the simple answer is it's physics. Like, you need the red to block the blue. You need yellow to block part of the blue. And that's why you'll see some of the daytime lenses with the yellow tint. The clear lenses, at best, if they're really good, you'll see a slight purple tint outside of it. And those are great for daytime use, or if you're in the office or somewhere that you don't want to be sticking out like a sore thumb, but you're still going to use them, right? Oh, here we go. There we go.
I'm like, let me put mine on. Why are they not up?
Nice.
These are the daytime ones. So these are still dark for being daytime, but yeah.
And you can see even a little tint on yours, though. You can see it on the outside.
Oh, yeah. They're dark for daytime ones, as some of the other ones I've seen. But I have clients, some of the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, I have those. And I'm like, what do they look like? And they show me, and I'm like, no, you're not wearing those.
Yeah. I've had people, sorry, no.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I know we're running out of time here, and oh my gosh, I have so many other things I want to talk to you about. And I would love to even share with our listeners, like, what you're blocking your screen with, the lights you use, all of that kind of stuff. So maybe you can just send me a list, and I can put it in the show notes so that people can check it out.
Yeah, I know you have other guests lined up. I'll do a part 2 with you anytime. You just let me know.
Okay.
But I will send all of that over for sure. I'll give some verbal answer. The program I use is called Iris. Use that one for sure. Fantastic computer program. Not a replacement for the lights, but it's awesome for the daytime.
Okay, perfect. And what's your favorite glasses, or what do you?
I'm tied and pretty impartial between RA Optics, and Blue Blocks as well. The only issue now is I'm guessing most of your listeners at this time are probably US based, and Australia customs right now are a pain in the butt, and they have been throughout a lot of the pandemic. So with RA Optics, you support someone that is US based, and you are also going to probably get your glasses a hell of a lot quicker. Blue Blocks has done a fantastic job, though, with a cheaper price point and more variety in their style. Again, these things only get so stylish, but they have done a better job at that overall. So check out both blublox.com and raoptics.com.
Yeah, I use RA Optics because I've read through a lot of their information, and they actually test their glasses, and you can see the studies behind it. And I think that's some of the issues with some of the other ones you might get on Amazon, and you're like, how do you know if this is really a good quality? So I think if you're going to invest in something you can trust, and is the proper spec, like colors and everything, like you said. Cool. So we'll put that in the show notes. And I always like to ask this question, and maybe it may have to do with kind of what you just said, maybe not, but if you could leave our listeners with one action that they can take this week to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would it be?
Absolutely. It's an easy one for me. Catch sunrise every single day. Never miss it again. Give me 30 days. That's all I'm asking. 30 days of doing it. Set an alarm. Go catch it for 30 minutes, even if it's raining. Yes, it works. I don't care if you go back in and go to bed after that, but do that for 30 days. And then you let me know if you want to go back after that. I haven't had one person in 4 years ever go back.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. Is there anything else you want to share that we missed? And if not, then just go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you and learn more about you.
Sure. We could talk forever again. I'm happy to hop back on again eventually, and I know we'll have you on the podcast again eventually on our end. But basically two things. I do speak professionally to kids. It's not about the natural health stuff, so to speak. It's a call to action to ask for help. And so if you're interested in those services, I'm more of a motivational speaker, honestly, by trade. That's my main thing. I've spoken to tens of thousands of students at this point. Super busy year, which is kind of bittersweet. You know what I mean? You don't really want to be busy with this job, but it is what it is, and I do enjoy doing it. So that's evantransue.com. You can find my stuff there. And then in terms of the health stuff, feel free to check out the Health Detective podcast by FDN Thrive. We've had Rachel on. I heard your episode. Seriously, I'm not just saying this. It actually did great, by the way. It's like one of our top 5. So people really love the topics that you brought on there.
Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
So that was cool. You're like, all right, I didn't know this. So that was cool. And then I also have a mental health radio show in the greater Philadelphia area that's saved as a podcast. And that is called the Friday Mental Health Power Hour with Scotty P and Ev. Scott is my co-host on there.
Okay, great. We will put all of those links in the show notes then so that everybody can check that out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.